Imagine waking up to this headline: Federal Appeals Court rules Trump tariffs illegal. For years, Donald Trump declared his sweeping tariffs the crown jewel of his presidency. He told cheering crowds they would make America rich again, a bold economic weapon against what he called unfair foreign trade. But on a crisp Friday morning, the U.S. Court of Appeals delivered a stunning blow. Trump overreached. His tariffs? Unconstitutional. The court ruled that Trump had no authority to impose global tariffs under emergency powers. With a 7-4 decision, the judges called his actions contrary to law. Trump fired back instantly, posting on Truth Social, "If allowed to stand, this decision would literally destroy the United States of America." The villain of this story is clear: arrogance, defiance, the unchecked reach of executive power. And the hero? The quiet force of the law, a court reminding America that the power of the purse rests with Congress, not a single man. But here's the twist: the tariffs didn't vanish overnight. The judges set a ticking clock. By mid-October, if the Supreme Court doesn't intervene, those tariffs, billions in taxes on global trade, will crumble. So what happens next? Chaos in the markets, a Supreme Court showdown, or a political earthquake that shakes Trump's entire movement? Stay tuned, because what's about to unfold is bigger than trade policy. It's about the very limits of presidential power. And what happened next left the entire nation holding its breath. Let's rewind. April. A podium. Trump steps up, flanked by American flags. He announces a flat 10% tariff on imports from nearly every nation on Earth. His justification? America was being cheated, and only he was brave enough to fight back. The crowd roared. MAGA hats flew. Trump declared, "This will finally even out our unfair trade relations." But behind the spectacle, ordinary Americans began to feel the sting. Small-town shop owners watched prices rise. A car mechanic in Ohio struggled to afford imported parts. Farmers, once promised prosperity, faced shrinking markets overseas. Every day, goods, from electronics to clothing, climbed in price. On TV, economists warned this wasn't protection, it was punishment. Tariffs, they explained, are just taxes. Taxes passed on to the consumer. And yet Trump framed it as an act of national security, invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEPA. A law meant to defend against foreign threats. A law that had never been used this way. The image was cinematic. On one side, a populist president promising greatness. On the other, families struggling under hidden taxes. For a while, Trump seemed untouchable. His tariffs became policy, his rallies louder, his narrative stronger. But behind closed doors, judges and trade experts whispered the same truth. This wasn't legal. And when the courts finally spoke, they did more than question a policy. They lit the fuse for a constitutional clash. Because just when Trump thought his tariffs were untouchable, a group of judges pulled the emergency brake. Friday. The ruling drops, a 7-4 decision from the U.S. Court of Appeals. Their conclusion was blunt. The IEEPA gives presidents power over sanctions, not tariffs. No authority to impose taxes, no blank check to rewrite trade policy. The power of the purse, the court reminded, belongs to Congress. In that moment, the judiciary stood tall as the hero, a guardian of constitutional balance. Trump, however, erupted. He blasted the court as highly partisan and warned the decision would destroy America. His Truth Social posts spread like wildfire, amplified by loyal followers who saw the ruling as proof of a deep state conspiracy. Cable news lit up. CNN panels called it a defining check on executive power. Fox News painted it as an attack on Trump's legacy. On TikTok, teenagers mocked rising food and clothing prices with sarcastic memes. "Thanks, tariffs. Social media became a battlefield. Hashtags trended: Nas Court vs. Trump, Tariff Truth, Presidential Overreach. The drama was Shakespearean. On one side, the solemn gavel of justice. On the other, a defiant president rallying his base, branding himself a victim of corruption. Yet here's the twist. The judges didn't kill the tariffs immediately. They left them intact until mid-October. Why? To give Trump a window to appeal, a window to fight, a window to gamble his political capital on the ultimate showdown, the U.S. Supreme Court. And in that pause, in that fragile waiting period, lay uncertainty for businesses, for families, for the global economy, because Trump wasn't done. He was just getting started. Escalation, political battlefield, 450 words. Washington erupted. Democrats hailed the ruling as a victory for checks and balances. Elizabeth Warren tweeted, "No president is above the law, not even Donald Trump." Republicans? A mixed chorus. Some quietly admitted the tariffs had hurt their districts, but many rallied behind Trump, calling the court's decision a judicial power grab. Internationally, the ripple effects grew. European leaders wondered, were trade deals signed with Trump still valid? Japanese negotiators stalled talks. Markets wavered. Businesses postponed contracts. Oxford economist Linda Yue warned, uncertainty will dampen economic activity. But the biggest storm gathered over the Supreme Court. Here was the arena. 6 conservative justices, 3 handpicked by Trump himself. Could they hand him a historic win? Or would they, like in Biden's student loan case, remind America that even presidents must respect the boundaries of law? Commentators painted the stakes in cinematic terms. If the court sided with Trump, the presidency gains near limitless economic power. If they ruled against him, Trump's tariffs collapse. His narrative of invincibility shattered. Trump's allies whispered that this was his legacy moment. His enemies warned it could unleash chaos. The political battlefield stretched beyond Washington. In diners across America, farmers debated whether to support the man who claimed to defend them. On Wall Street, traders bet billions on possible outcomes, and looming over it all was Trump himself, casting the fight as a war for America's soul. He declared, "Now, with the help of the Supreme Court, we will use tariffs to make America rich, strong, and powerful again." But the question wasn't just about tariffs anymore. It was about power. Who controls America's economic destiny? Congress, the courts, or one man in the Oval Office? And then, the story took a turn that no one expected. It wasn't just politicians or judges who weighed in. It was ordinary people. Small business owners took to Facebook, demanding clarity. Students created viral TikToks comparing the price of shoes before and after tariffs. Hashtags like tariff tax began trending, uniting left and right in rare agreement. Americans were paying the price. Grassroots groups rallied. Farmers held town halls. Parents complained about higher grocery bills. For once, it wasn't elites driving the conversation. It was the people. The narrative shifted. Trump portrayed himself as the hero under attack. But online, Americans began asking a different question. If tariffs aren't legal, what else has he done outside the law? The tension was electric. Every day, more stories poured in. Single moms cutting back on school supplies, factories halting, production. The real impact of tariffs wasn't abstract. It was lived, painful, human. And just when the public pressure seemed unbearable, whispers emerged from inside Trump's own circle. Advisors questioning strategy. Business allies expressing doubt. The cracks weren't just in the courts or the markets. They were in Trump's armor itself, and that's when everything changed. So what happens next? The clock ticks toward October. The Supreme Court looms. If They uphold the lower court, Trump's tariffs fall. Billions in taxes evaporate. America's role in global trade recalibrates. And most importantly, a precedent is set. No president, not even Trump, can seize powers not granted by law. If they side with Trump, the presidency expands. Future leaders could bypass Congress with ease, reshaping trade and democracy with the stroke of a pen. Either way, this story is bigger than tariffs. It's about the balance of power, about whether America is ruled by institutions or individuals. And in the end, the moral is clear. Democracies are tested not in calm, but in crisis. And every time it comes down to one question: do we defend the law, or do we bow to the loudest voice? The courts have spoken. The people are speaking. The Supreme Court will decide. But history reminds us of this truth. In America, the law, not one man, decides our future.